Well, g'day everybody, it's Jeff Adam here. You're down to the coach and welcome to our Sydney virtual vacation, the gateway to New South Wales and the gateway to Australia. I mean, people think of Sydney, and of course it is high on the list when you're going down under to visit this amazing, bustling metropolis. And for good reason, I've actually invited my travel advisor partners to invite their guests, their family, their friends and their clients. And they've actually asked if we could put together a little Australia travel kit. So we've done that. We've created a little kit, and the kit includes a digital DUA travel planner, so we can email that out to you straight away. I'll be sending these all to the travel advisors so they can follow on after this if you're interested in receiving that. If you'd like to get an Aussie map, maps are great. Open up a map and start plotting. We all need to take the time to dream, to think ahead when the world becomes one again. So yes, a map is a good place to start. That helps us map out the journey that is before us. Of course, when we take a journey to a foreign country, we're going to make sure we can speak the local language. And a fair dinkum Aussie dictionary will definitely help you with that. It may even help you understand what I've been saying. I hope you're understanding me. I have been to a speech therapist, you'll be pleased to know. I have asked for my money back too, but that's another story. Yes, so any of these pieces here, we will make sure we send to your travel advisor. So you just contact them. You send them an email and say, can you send me a dictionary, send me a map, and send me a link to that travel planner. The reason why we work with travel advisors only is because travel advisors really do help you with regards to creating a great vacation experience. They bring peace of mind, they give you great customer service, they maximize your budget, they give you better choices, and they really do save you time. They provide this personal service, great insights and expertise. They give you assistance with their documentation, and they are your advocate. So when you run into trouble, if you need any assistance, they've got great industry contacts that bring it all together. They are truly your mate. And a mate is a person who makes Australia travel easy. So let's start on that journey. Let's start with Australia and compare it to the size of North America, it actually fits in pretty much the same size as the USA, as you can see here. So it means it's quite a large country, and therefore just getting a car in Florida and driving up to see that big rock in the center of Australia, it's like driving from Florida to Denver. So it's a long way. So they've got great domestic services, and there's also other ways in which you can get around Australia. You can drive portions of it. You can go with train and also with coach, and so there's lots of ways we can kind of link things together. Australia's broken up into 6 states and 2 territories. You've got West Australia, South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, which is where Sydney is, and Queensland. The 2 territories are the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, which is found in Canberra, which Canberra sits inside New South Wales. Now, our focus today is going to be in New South Wales, but the whole of Australia's population is 25 million, and New South Wales makes up 8 million. And the population of Sydney alone is 5 million people. And when you fly into this bustling metropolis, I mean, it's just an electric air to it. It's such a well-planned city. And the international flights with Qantas and Air New Zealand and Virgin Australia, amongst many others, will kind of bring you to this incredible harbour port. And you'll also find there are some great domestic services that will link you to other parts of your vacation experience. But let's have a quick look at the city itself. In this picture here, on the right-hand side, you can see the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is also referred to as the big coat hanger. And you can really see a big hook up the top of that. Now, Paul Hogan, who was famous for Crocodile Dundee, the comedian, he basically used to work as a rigger on this bridge. This area in here is called the Rocks, lovely historic area. And we'll head down there and check out some of the lovely cobblestone streets and pubs and restaurants. On this side over here, that's called Barangaroo. And Barangaroo then enters into, that's at the very entrance to what they call Darling Harbour. Just in here, that's Darling Harbour. Over here, this side is called Circular Quay. And Circular Quay is where the ferries bring in daily commuters to this bustling metropolis of Sydney. Yes, that great little city. So ferries and boats are all departing from there. Now, out on this point, which is named Bennelong Point, after a very famous Aboriginal gentleman who was quite an assistant to the early settlers. Bennelong basically was there. He initially was captured and shackled, and he became friends with the colonists. And Governor Phillip adopted him, and basically he helped, really did help open up that area. Incidentally, so that area that's named after him, Bennelong Point, which is where you'll see the Sydney Opera House. Now, it's interesting. This was actually before it became the Opera House. It was actually an Aboriginal mitten. Now, what's a mitten? Well, a mitten is where the Aboriginal people would discard shells and fish bones and so on. They would have a mitten. Now, the purpose behind a mitten was it helped them keep check of what they'd been eating and what they'd been hunting. So if another group had kind of come through and they'd go to the mitten, and they'd say, oh, look, there's oyster shells up there. Well, we won't go and eat oysters. We'll go and eat abalone. And the whole purpose was the Aboriginal people were very connected with the land and the ocean and the food source. And they realised that if they kept eating oyster shells, well, then there wouldn't be enough oysters to kind of come back. So it's really quite interesting. And a mitten, therefore, would be a pile of shells. So when you look down on the Sydney Opera House, it looks like a pile of shells, doesn't it? Like a pile of broken plates or broken shells. Some say when it was actually designed as sails for sailing boats, because of course the first settlers sailed in, their big billowing sails would have come into this point, and they would have looked upon that perhaps, and local Aussies like to think of it as a group of nuns packing a scrum. You can just see a scrum is a rugby term where they get together and they lock shoulders and they push each other across a field. Yes, maybe it's that. I think it's more tongue-in-cheek, of course. But behind the Opera House is the lovely Botanic Gardens, which was the original convict settlement. Now, I'm going to go back to Bennelong just for a quick second. Bennelong had a wife, and his wife was named Barangaroo, and that's why the name for this new development over here has come along. Yes, and Barangaroo was quite a different woman of the world. I mean, she was very much her own person. And she really, I mean, the English women at the time were very much in their place, where she just spoke her mind, and she was very worldly and very wise, and she was a far freer spirit than the settler women that kind of came in. And when she was taken to task, I think she was actually invited to a meeting with a group of soldiers, and she refused to eat. I mean, she was not taking these colonists, and she had just observed them, and she saw them. They were wasteful. They were wasteful with fish. They would catch using nets more fish than they could possibly eat. And she was quite a resistance, quite a powerful woman. And so, respectfully, we use her name in naming this new development. And I'll touch on that again in a moment. But actually, this picture here will point out those regions again. This is going to help you get your bearings. It's important you understand how the city's laid out. From the right-hand side, you've got the Botanic Gardens, which leads into Bennelong Point and the Sydney Opera House. Circular Quay is where all the ferries come in. You can see the dotted lines. The ferries path they take to various suburbs of Sydney. The Rocks is the historic area just in here. And that road there leads to the bridge. That's the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Over here is that Bennelong Reserve, which has been developed, and it's quite impressive. And then this kind of leads down into Darling Harbour. And we'll touch on these areas. We'll go and visit Sea Life Sydney Aquarium, and we'll touch on a few places. But it just helps you understand the dynamic of the city. I always think when it comes to accommodation that you should be staying in here. Now, people will kind of stay outside of Sydney. All the tours, all the action, all the activities, restaurants are all down here. So the restaurants, the hotels that I'll be suggesting will be having you in the right location. When you are in Sydney, you want to be in the right location. And one great location is the Rocks, this historic area with cobblestone streets and lovely colonial buildings. A lot of these buildings are hand-hewn stone buildings built by convict labour. The Fortune War is a number of pubs. In fact, every corner's got a pub on it in Australia, and this particular pub here is the oldest pub in Sydney, and it's a great pub. There's something about Australian pubs. I love the smell of a pub. You walk in and you belly up to the bar, and the barman slaps the beer on the bar, and got a nice big head of foam there, blow the froth off a coldie. Yes, you like that. A pig's ear, a beer, the rhyming slang of Australia. And you might have a counter meal. Now, a counter meal is a meal you'd have over the counter. And the Fortune War has got a wonderful fare, have a nice counter meal. There's probably going to be a musician in the corner with a guitar singing local colonial Australian songs. I mean, it is a wonderful welcome. But no welcome surpasses that of this woman here. This is Auntie Margaret. And Auntie Margaret will give you a traditional Aboriginal welcome. She'll take you on a heritage tour of of the Sydney area, past the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, through the rocks, and you'll learn about the plight of the Aboriginal people. And it was quite, it wasn't the best of times for the Aboriginal people because, of course, the settlers kind of came in and seemingly took over. And with that, now we are going through a phase of really giving back to our Aboriginal people and really giving an opportunity to share their story, because it's a story we should have been paying attention to. Just that one I shared with you with regards to how they managed food in terms of the mitten. I mean, the Aboriginal people were very much connected to land, and you will learn of that. To do a guided walk with Auntie Margaret is a great insight, and to learn about the Aboriginal culture. We're talking about the oldest living culture in the world. Over 50,000 years of Dreamtime lore and legend. Before those sailing boats kind of came into shore with all these colonists, Aboriginal people have been living here untouched for all that time, and they still exist today, and they are a powerful force still. And we give them, I pay them such acknowledgement here in this presentation for the opportunity to meet with an Aboriginal person and to have a welcome to country is a great start to your Sydney vacation experience. Now, if you're staying down here, that's actually the Grand Hyatt. You're looking at the building behind that group, which is a great hotel. But the one I want to touch on first, the 4-star, that's the Ridges Sydney Harbour. Now, I love the location. I love the fact that from the rooftop, you can take your coffee up here in the morning, or maybe a bottle of champagne at the end of the day. You get views of the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. You won't be paying expensive pricing, but at the same time, you'll be getting quite an impactful location. That location is great because you step outside that hotel, and you on a Friday and a Saturday, the markets are just alive with activity. You can wander through here and buy some local foods and just have a chat to locals. They'll love to hear your Canadian and your American accents. Aussies are quite fascinated with travellers, and you'll kind of meet some great people here. In fact, I always say to people, if you've got that map in your hand, just turn your map around a couple of times and see how long it takes for an Aussie to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, mate, you all right? You want a hand?" And look, I'm trying to find a good restaurant. Oh, head down to the restaurants, the rocks, they'll suggest. Right down the waterfront, right next to the Grand Hyatt, there's this fabulous restaurant on the rocks. And it's just a delightful location, al fresco dining. You're sitting there with a big plate of seafood. You've got prawns, which is like shrimp on steroids, as big as your bloody arm, and a nice glass of Hunter Valley Chardonnay. Oh, it just doesn't get any better. Well, it does if you're staying here. If you're staying at the Hyatt Sydney Harbour, you have got the most gorgeous views of the Opera House. And that the waterway there is quite alive with activity. You're kind of staying in this great location. In fact, if you want to go and visit the Opera House, you can just order a water taxi and get picked up and get yourself all frocked up and go across the Opera House to see a show. In fact, that whole water area, this is a good view here because it shows you Circular Quay, which is where those boats are departing from. And you can see the Opera House out there on Bennelong Point, and you can see the big cruise ship that's in there right now. And that's their part of the rocks area. That cruise ship, this is where cruises will either start or finish. One thing I'll say about cruise ships is you won't see a lot of Australia on one. So when you are organising a trip and you're going down, if you're doing a cruise, you need to talk to your travel advisor and say, "Hey, do you think I should see a bit more of Australia?" The answer is a yes, emphatically a yes. There's so much to see, and you'll learn here, just in Sydney, what there is to do. I mean, from this very point here, from Circular Quay, you can hop on a ferry and head out and see all the suburbs. But I highly recommend going on a Captain Cook hop-on, hop-off vessel, because you'll get great commentary on board here, and you'll get a passes, so you can basically go and spend as much time at any one of the locations. One spot that draws a lot of people is the Taronga Zoo. It boasts probably one of the best views of any zoo in the world. It sits up here overlooking the harbour, just delightful. Kangaroos don't seem to mind it, let me tell you. The big reds you'll get to see in there, and you'll see all sorts of wonderful wildlife. You realise that 90% of Australia's wildlife is actually nocturnal. So to see them, you've really got to go see them at night, or see them in facilities where they will present them well, like, for example, the platypus. Now look at this little guy. It's no wonder the British first thought the platypus was a joke, because it's got a bill like a duck, it's got a tail like a beaver, the male's got spurs in their hind legs. It actually has in its bill, it has a little taser, and it sends out a little electric shock, and it can stun small crustaceans. I mean, it's pretty freaky and pretty amazing. It's a monotreme too. What's a monotreme? It's an egg-laying marsupial. It's like a bloody dinosaur. And these little guys can be seen here at the Taronga Zoo. And one spot they're being introduced to as well is the Taronga Zoo also offers the opportunity to stay overnight. You can stay at the Taronga Zoo Wildlife Retreat, and that way you'll get to see some of these nocturnal wildlife species. And this here is the accommodation, the main dining area and your lounge area. Look at the view. I mean, it's $1 million view. And your accommodations also overlooking this beautiful little area of Australian bush. They've got this lovely pathway of Australian bush, which in itself provides a great pathway for wildlife. So you're sitting in your bed, you wake up in the morning, and you got a koala looking at you. Hey, put some clothes on you. and during the day, you can pop outside and sit down and enjoy some of the wildlife, little Bennett's wallabies and potoroos and bettongs, coming in to say hello. These are all different marsupials. Yeah, kind of cute, eh? Now, the other thing about that vessel, that the Captain Cook can take you out, they'll hop on and hop off, they can drop you across to Watson's Bay. What a great spot right on Sunset here. And look at Sydney in the lovely silhouette of the city in the background. And the bar here on a Sunday night, this bar goes off like a frog in a sock, the Watto Bay Tavern, Watson's Bay. There's also a great restaurant. Highly recommend Doyle's Seafood Restaurant. Iconic. Doyle's is synonymous with great seafood, and it's a great location. So sitting out here at lunchtime with a glass of wine and enjoying some of the seafood. Now, you can see in here, the picture, you can see oysters. You can see oysters and salmon and their prawns there. See these ones in here? They're called bugs. And they're not the bugs you scrape off your windshield. These are Moreton Bay bugs. And, oh, my goodness me, they taste good. This is calamari and deep-fried fish and chips. And, I'm just salivating. I've eaten, and I'm still hungry. You can do that. And you can also sail. You can actually have a nice little seafood spread. You can actually hop on a sailing vessel and just glide around the harbour, taking in the view and the vista. I like the idea of travelling like a local, doing what locals do. Sailing's one of the things, or just a good powerboat, getting on a powerboat with a barbecue on the back. You're a small ship sailing, you're maximum like 8 to 12 people on these little boats, and plenty of space, and a chance to have some fun together. I mean, you'll get a chance to see where all the rich and famous people living around the harbour, and maybe punch out through Sydney Heads. I'll tell you where the heads are later. This takes you out in the open ocean. You're out here because you're going to cruise like a local and check out some of the local visitors. Yeah, the humpback whale that come through here. Great photograph, courtesy of a good travel advisor friend of mine, Linda Schumacher. Now, at night, another great evening experience, a great cruising experience, is Captain Cook. They had this Gold Penfolds cruise where they pair a fabulous meal with some of Penfolds spectacular wines, a name that is synonymous with the start of Australia's wine industry was through Penfolds. They made a wine called the Grange Hermitage, and well, if you're lucky enough, you might even taste it here. But a great way to kind of raise a glass and say, Australia, you bloody beauty. Here we are in Sydney. Fantastic. And nothing says Sydney more than gliding under the Opera House, or gliding under the Harbour Bridge, rather, and past the Sydney Opera House. The Opera House itself, of course, needs more than just a passing glance. It requires a little bit of a visit and maybe going and seeing a show. Now, they've got all sorts of different attractions. You'll have here music and theatre and opera and mud wrestling. They'll do anything to get an audience. And you've really got to organise yourself and make sure you do a little bit of a tour. Do a backstage tour. We can tee it up, a small group, take you through here, and they'll explain the inner workings of this amazing building. You'll be captivated by the thought that's gone into the design and the whole functionality of this. And really, one thing that you should do before you leave is look to get tickets organised. Now, your travel advisor can help you with this. You'll work with us and we'll pull together some great entertainment for you. It needs to be booked in advance because they book out very quickly. Because guess who likes to go? Australians. And when you're sitting there with your program in your hands, in between the intervals, you might just start asking questions of the people around, using your best Canadian or American accent. And Australians go, look, where are you from? And all of a sudden, you're making friends, you're having bubbles with them. I mean, after a great walk through the Opera House, you can do what's called a tour and a tasting plate. The tasting plate, they'll put together a little box of goodies that's come straight from the opera kitchen. You'll sit outside and take in that whole spectacle of the harbour. Or if you want to step it up a bit, you want to go and see a show and then perhaps go to the Bennelong restaurant. Well, it's been a long time. I got to say, when I was there last, it was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. The restaurant itself, it does serve some fabulous food, and yes, as the name suggests, it's named after the Aboriginal helper, Mr. Bennelong, and that looked after this mitten that was out there. Now this mitten, of course, is serving up some amazing food. Now, food is important when you're travelling, and Sydney has got some great restaurants, a plethora of great spots to enjoy fabulous food. And al fresco dining is a must, and I always like the Opera Bar. That's a high point for me to sit outside. And another restaurant that invites the outside in is the Aria. Now, the Aria is run by Joel Bickford, and he's won many awards over the years. The Aria brings a real vision of creativity that is Joel Bickford's. I mean, it's the best seasonal produce, world-class wine, and it's just filled with lovely art as well. And of course, we've got the sweeping views of both the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. It's a great spot. Then you've also got the key restaurant, Peter Gilmore. Now, Gilmore himself is well renowned. He's voted within the top 50 restaurants in the world, and this one the key restaurant sits on the other side, looking back across the circular quay to the Opera House. It's a great restaurant. His dining is phenomenal, and they really do a marvelous job. Now, one of the newies on the block, and this is the Fish Butchery and St. Peter Restaurant, Josh Nyland. This one took my fancy. I used to work in restaurants myself, and what Josh has taken on board, he realised that when you fillet a fish, only 45% of the fish is actually the fillet. 55% gets thrown away. So he's actually created a fish butchery, and he uses 91% of every fish. And he puts it into some amazing meals, and it's truly at the forefront. I think fish tends to get, in our Western society, not so much in Eastern cultures, but in Western society, we tend to kind of cut the fillets off and throw the rest away. And yet we're leaving so much good off the table. So here, Josh has won numerous awards. He's done a marvelous job. His restaurant's called St. Peter, but he also has a butchery. Then the butchery, they actually, you know how you'll hang meat and you'll have aged meat? Well, they actually do that with fish. And it's the food here, the quality of the food is exceptional. If you're a true foodie, you will march to his door. And let me tell you, we need to make bookings before you go. Speaking of making bookings, Mary's Underground's a popular spot. When I was living down here, it was a better known as the Basement. And the Basement was a real jazz and blues sort of club. Now it's expanded the actual offering. So you'll get rock and roll as well as jazz and blues. So depending what interests you, what I like about it, it's got a real supper club feel about it. No smoking, supper club feel, great food, great wine, great entertainment. That to me is a good night out. Now, if you want a good wine and pasta evening, the Regalis is definitely in the business sector is a real popular spot. I'm talking about places that are humming right now. I mean, there's lots of restaurants in Sydney, but when you go down to Sydney, you're going to be given guidance to go to places that are where it's happening. And happening is exactly what's going on with the Burke Street Bakery. These guys have taken off. Now, bakeries, as a kid growing up in Australia, a bakery is a quintessential part of being an Aussie. You go to the bakery to get yourself a meat pie, a dog's eye, or a sausage roll. It's a long way to the shop if you want a sausage roll. Remember that AC/DC song? Well, it wasn't exactly. We changed the words. But let me tell you, the pastry shop is where we go to get our tucker, our food, and we love good pastries. And this Burke Street Bakery is one of the best bakeries, Australian bakeries out there. In fact, they're doing so well, they've just opened up in New York. So if there's any New Yorkers out there, I want to hear about it. Let me know if you go to the Burke Street Bakery. Their coffee is top shelf too. And another place that's new, Archie's Rose Distillery. Now, what I like about Archie's, this is the first distillery in the last 160 years. Now, it seems kind of strange for a country, and in particular a city, when Sydney was first born, the currency, the only currency that was used to procure items and food and so on was rum. Yeah, you heard me right. Rum. Barrels of rum. So when workers worked, when convict workers who had kind of been released, when they worked, they got paid in quantities of rum. And if you wanted to buy something, you wanted to buy a horse, it would cost you so many barrels of rum. Yeah, you like that? Australians, eh? I wish we still had that currency quietly. I think it'd work well. Archie's Rose Distillery, though, they've got a fabulous array of spirits that they're now producing, and they've won best distillery, world's best distillery experience. They've been the top 3 distilleries in the world at the Global Distilleries Awards, and they've just swept all the pools. And nothing like, when you think about what sort of souvenir can you bring back from a place like Sydney? Well, here you can bring back an Opera House gin, which is delightful. Absolutely delightful. Now we've moved across to that Barangaroo region. There's a place called Barangaroo House. And there's a bar that's been voted Sydney's best new bar called Smoke. And it sits out with fabulous views over the harbour at the very entrance to this harbour. And Barangaroo itself is quite the investment of development. There's a lot of casino has gone in here, accommodations, and along the waterfront, there's some fabulous restaurants. And this kind of goes into an area called Darling Harbour. And Darling Harbour has got a fabulous restaurant scene. It's also got some great attractions like the Sydney Sea Life Aquarium, where you'll get to see all sorts of weird and wonderful animals. Do you like that one there? It looks like a big hoover, like a big vacuum, doesn't it? It's a dugong. It's an Australian dugong. Yeah, they're harmless like sea cows. And he's having some lettuce for lunch there. And you also, next door, is the Sydney Wildlife Zoo. You get a chance to meet the wombat, little hairy-nosed wombat. Isn't he gorgeous? Little wombat. That's a marsupial, got a pouch. They poop cubes. Yeah, you'll have to ask me more about that later, but not right now. Let me move on to breakfast. And having breakfast with the koalas, well, that's the happiest time of the day, breakfast. And so why not spend it with a koala? Eh? What a great start. The whole restaurant scene here in Darling Harbour is a lot of fun. At night, it takes on a completely new array, and lots of great events happen down here as well. Now, you might want to walk some of that off. And my favourite thing to do is the Sydney Harbour bridge climb. Now, the bridge climb itself can take about 3 hours all up, but the first part is actually done just doing safety checks. It's very safe. Now, they use the same harness they use for the around-the-world yachts. So you're clipped to that bridge. It's quite it's about 6 to 8 foot wide, so it's really wide, and you've got a guide at the front, and you're in little groups of 10, and you're all hooked up with microphones. And you'll walk a distance, you'll stop, and they'll talk about what you're looking at. And you'll keep making your way up the bridge until you get to the very, very top. Now, the best time to do this is sunset and sunrise. Why? Because it just is the way your day works. I mean, if you get up early in the morning, sunset, the other thing too is the light is very, very pretty at sunset and sunrise. And, the lovely sky colours, gorgeous. So if you're doing it at sunrise, you've got the whole day after to go and do things. If you go and have a full day of activity and do a sunset climb, when you come back down, you'll feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and you go out and hit about 5 pubs. But it's definitely the way to go, and you need to book these things. So you need to talk to your travel advisor. Make sure you've got these things locked in. Planning. That's what it's all about. And the fun starts when you call your travel advisor. Now, another great place for a good view is the Sydney Tower Eye, with beautiful views out over the harbour. That's that little tower you see there. And it has actually a lovely Sydney Tower restaurant, a revolving restaurant where you get a chance to take in. It's also a good vantage point to kind of work out where things are at. A great hotel that gives a great vantage point is the Shangri-La in Sydney. It sits up on the side of a hill, very close to the access for the bridge climb. And as you can see, this is a suite with phenomenal views of the harbour itself. Another 5-star, the Langham Sydney, I like because it's more of a locals 5-star. It sits a street back from all the main busy trafficked areas for tourism, and people living in this street are locals. So the hotel itself, very colonial interiors and just delightfully decorated. It is just beautiful. Right across the road from it, there's a tennis court, and you can go for a walk up past the tennis court and walk up to Observation Hill. There's one of those sunsets I'm talking about. Look at the Sydney sunsets. Pink at night, Shepherd's Delight from Observation Hill. That's a great view and vista. So again, this is what I'm saying. It's all about knowing where to go. Now, a good way of being in the right hands is to link up with like a city cycling tour. Now, that will help you out because even all the the reading you can do, going out with a local guide and just relax and listening to great conversation and stopping at points along the way. It's not too arduous. A lot of these bikes now are electric bikes. They kind of help you with your travel, so you don't have to worry about pushing up a hill. You'll be taken up the hill by this electric bike. But it's good. It gets you out there, a little bit of exercise. If you want more exercise, we've also started up Sydney running tours. This is a lot of fun. I got to say, running around Sydney Harbour, getting up early in the morning just as the sun's rising and going for a bit of a jog with a guide, somebody talk to you about what you're looking at, it really sets up your frame of mind for wanting to get out and explore and see more. Like, for example, you might run through the Botanic Gardens, but you want to come back here and you want to explore it because, that big purple jacaranda tree, you'll see beautiful big Moreton Bay fig trees, these big buttress root trees. You'll see, you might see little water dragons kind of running around. You'll see kookaburras laughing in the trees. Rainbow-coloured lorikeets will be preening themselves and eating on the lovely pollen from the flowers of the gum tree. And right on sunset, little brush-tailed possums will come out to pick up anything left out. Yes, this is a great spot, and I'd highly recommend getting here in the middle of the day, going for a lunch or a little afternoon tea. Stop. Remember to kind of just listen and learn and soak and observe. It's just a beautiful park, and it's free. And very close to the edge of that park is Mrs. Macquarie's chair. Now, Governor Macquarie, the first governor of Australia, was actually here, and he basically his wife would sit up here waiting for the big sailing ships to come in. And this is the view that she would have, this beautiful picture view of Sydney. Of course, there wasn't an opera house and a harbour bridge, but there were big sailing ships that would come sailing through here. And it's a good spot now to make sure that you find some time to get a great photograph, a great group photograph. Harry's Cafe de Wheels is just around the corner. And this is an iconic little spot. Everybody loves to go to Harry's. You'll line up here and try their classic pie floater. That's a pastry-encased meat pie with, on top of that, mashed potato and mushy green peas and piping hot gravy. Now, if you're not salivating, you're not real. I mean, seriously, this is great food. No? Well, you've got to try it when you're down there. And I like to get out of the city and go to the local markets, go to Everleigh's farmers markets. I mean, Australia is such a multicultural destination. You've got to understand we've got the largest population of Greeks outside of Athens are down in neighbouring Melbourne. There's Italians and Vietnamese and Chinese. And you'll wander through here and you'll be able to savour some great food. It's just a great spot to kind of mix and mingle with people. And I love the fact that everybody's got a very keen ear for accents. And as soon as they hear, oh, you're from America, you're from Canada, they'll want to chat to you, want to talk to you. A good place to truly elevate your experience is to hop on a Sydney Harbour seaplane. Now, they leave from Rose Bay, which is the oldest airstrip in Australia, Rose Bay. And these little float planes will float out over the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, and they'll head out to the beaches. But if you want to escape, what we can do is take you to stay at the lovely luxury lodge, the Pretty Beach House. And you'll be staying out on this beautiful national park. You'll be surrounded by bush in this fabulous 5-star accommodations. You'll be checked into your lodgings, and it is after leaving North America, escaping to Australia to stay at a place like Pretty Beach House with your own private vessel to take you out to visit local little townships and some great hiking to do through the bush. Fabulous location. Going back to that plane now, you could also take off and go and visit some of the beaches. You could kind of head down to Dee Why, Curl, Manly Beach, named after manly men that Captain Cook saw when he first sailed into Botany Bay. And that picture's pretty good because you can see in the background, you can see there's the skyline of Sydney, there's the Harbour Bridge there, and your vessel would bring you out here and park it about here, and you'd get off and you'd walk through and you'd come onto Manly Beach. And over here, that's the heads. When I said the heads, when we went out and looked to whales, we took that boat out and we went out just into here, this region here. We saw the whales swimming straight past. Sometimes the whales can come in, not all the time, but they do tend to kind of swim past out here. And on this side over here is where you'll find Bondi Beach. Bondi Beach, the world-famous Bondi Beach, home and birthplace of the Australian surf lifesaver. Now, these surf lifesavers in Australia are volunteers. This guy's probably a doc. Next bloke over here is probably a chippy. This one's a sparky. This one running up behind is probably a bricky. Do you know what I'm saying? What's he saying here? Okay, well, it's Australian slang. So a chippy is a carpenter. A sparky is an electrician. A bricky is a bricklayer. Now, budgie smugglers, what are they? Well, that's that costume. That's that they call the cosy, the swimming costume. That's the guy's swimsuit. That's called a budgie smuggler. And a budgie, that's a parakeet. So anyway, I'll leave you to kind of work out why. Now, it's down here you get a chance to meet some of these budgie smuggling wearing surf lifesavers, and you can actually go on a little bit of a surf with them. They'll actually teach you how to surf, and they'll actually take you back to the oldest surf lifesaving club, the North Sydney Bondi Surf Lifesaving Club, and and also they'll drop into the RSL. Now the RSL is the Return Services League. Now this is very important for Americans and Canadians that have perhaps served their country, because there's great respect held for Australians and our North American partners, because we've, since the Second World War, fought side by side. In fact, even in the First World War, do you remember the First World War, that America did come into battle very, very late, and Australians were already there, and the Americans that came over actually fought in the First World War under Australian command. Did you know that? In the Second World War, the Australian menfolk were over in Europe, and we were quite exposed. So MacArthur and America came down to Australian shores, and the battles of the South Pacific and the Coral Sea were managed and fought from Australian soil. And ever since then, we've never forgotten. We look after our mates, and we've fought in every war that you've been involved in, Vietnam, Korea, all the way through to present day. So we've always been by your side. And a Return Service League is where you'll meet a lot of diggers. A digger is another name for an Australian soldier. And as people from America and Canada who have been involved in the services to come in here and to be noted as a member of the same group, you'll be looked after like royalty. And royalty too, because look at this view. What a great view over the Bondi Beach. What a great spot. Now, Iceberg's dining room also offers great views, and Iceberg's actually named after that pool because many Australian Olympian has used this pool to train when living here in Sydney. It's a great restaurant and bar as well, which gives you beautiful views back to the beach of Bondi. Now, you can walk all this food off. You can do a coastal walk between Bondi Beach and Coogee Beach, and it's just a great view and vista as well. Now, if you want to escape the city, Sydney's got a little light rail system that they've introduced, and it leaves from Circular Quay. That light rail system will take you out to Randwick. Now, Randwick is one of my favourite places to visit, the Royal Randwick, the races. If you like horse racing, if you like the Kentucky Derby, Australians love our races. We'll bet on two flies walking up a bloody wall. And we go to the races, we all get frocked up, we all get dressed up, the girls are dressed up, the boys are dressed up. We love to put a little punt, a little bet on. And this here horse was one that you could stick any money on. This here was Black Caviar. Now, Black Caviar was just a very famous horse. If you're into horse racing, look up Black Caviar because he broke all the records. Pretty much unbeaten, this horse, and just phenomenal. But if you want to get out and meet Australians, it's fun to go to the races. You get a chance to hear the Australian accent. They get also pumped up and having fun. If you want to see us playing sport, go and watch a game of rugby league. And here in New South Wales, they lug this game. And in fact, right now, they play a tournament between Queensland and New South Wales. And it's a big annual tournament. And it's called the State of Origin. And the passion between these two states, it's just unheralded. And to see this game in play, at the moment, New South Welshmen are the victors, and they won last year, but who knows what will happen this year. There's also cricket they play in Australia, and the Sydney Cricket Ground, of course, is a great exponent of that. Of course, the traditional cricket game would last for 4 days, and sometimes they wouldn't even get a result, a bit like watching baseball on Valium. It's improved. They've also got now 2020, and I've got to tell you, in 2014, I took over the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. We took over 400 supporters for the Diamondbacks, and they got into the cricket when they were there. Yeah, they kind of liked it. They were there to see a game of baseball. In fact, the baseball game was played right here. We redid the whole ground. I mean, Australia has had some great events, and Sydney in particular. Back in 1999, I looked after the Broncos and the Chargers, the first game of American football. It preceded the Olympic Games of 2000 that Sydney hosted. And then in 2002, we had the Gay Games here. And yes, we've had lots of events that have happened here in this lovely city. One game of sport that does travel well, that's golf. And Sydney boasts some fabulous golf courses right within the metropolitan area of Sydney itself. So we can tee that up. Just ask your travel advisor and we'll organise it. The other thing we'll tee up to is a smiley gal like this, an Aussie tour guide who picks you up in a four-wheel drive, and within an hour and a half, she's taking you up this bush track up to a place called the Blue Mountains. And it's called the Blue Mountains because the eucalyptus leaves permeate the atmosphere with fine droplets of oil, giving this lovely grey-blue haze. Now, you're looking down on here on Jamison Valley. This is like the Grand Canyon, but it's covered in trees. It's just phenomenal. And you can just make out the Three Sisters here. And this here is actually Lilienfeld's, which is a luxury lodge. Now, I've got to say, you can do a day trip or you can stay overnight. What happens if you stay overnight? Well, if you're staying overnight, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, people are starting to go back from that day trip, and you're left to having your own little sunset by yourself. The birds come out, the sounds of the bush, the wildlife comes out. In the morning you wake up, a cup of tea, you walk down to that little lookout to see the Three Sisters, and you've got it all to yourself. That's your view, all to yourself before the day trippers come up. So overnighting's not bad. But of course, if you're doing a day trip, you'll do a morning tea, and they'll stop and you'll have an Anzac Bicky. What's a Bicky? A Bicky, short for biscuit or cookie, and Anzac is short for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Now, these Anzac Bickies, mothers back in the First World War would bake these cookies up because they could basically live for about 4 months without being refrigerated. They were kind of hard cookies. They were tasty, and I've got the recipe. If you want the recipe, I can help you out with that. It makes me salivate. I'm going to bake a batch of these. I don't care it's 110 in Vegas. I'm going to make some, and I've got to say the Anzac Bickies are just delightful. So here you are having a morning tea, having a coffee and a cookie, and you've got kangaroos hopping around, you've got cockatoos squawking their box off, cockies or cockatoos, and yes, you get a chance to see the wildlife. And there's also this fabulous sanctuary to go and visit. And what I love about the sanctuary is they're giving back part proceeds to the planting of eucalyptus trees for koalas, re-establishing. And I love the fact that we're repurposing, like this, the Hydro Majestic Hotel. It actually fell into disrepute. Back in the 20s and the 30s, this place was hopping. I absolutely hopped. Now they've completely refurbished it. And it should be too, because look at this view. Look at the Hydro Majestic. It's like stepping back in time. And the view out of this, it is truly majestic views of the Blue Mountains. Now, if you want to really immerse yourself, then you need to go up and stay at the Emirates' one and only Woolgan Valley. This property is divine. Here you are in this beautiful bush setting, the sounds of kookaburras and magpies warbling. You'll have a nice dinner out there on the veranda of your lovely little bungalow. You can horseback ride. You're like a man from Snow River. You've got some great horseback riding through here, four-wheel driving, hiking. You can go stargazing at night, a little cup of coffee and a little glass of port. Yeah, the Blue Mountains offer some great opportunities to explore. You can hike, you can abseil, you can canyon into the Blue Mountains. I mean, what's interesting, I think, about the Blue Mountains is that within the last 20 to 30 years, they discovered a forest of Wollemi pine. Now, these Wollemi pine predate dinosaurs, and we'd only just found them, and they're nearly 100 foot tall. And can you believe that? I mean, it's just amazing. On the very doorstep of this bustling city of Sydney, 5 million people, we can still find nature's gems hidden right on our doorstep. Speaking of finding hidden gems, heading up to the Hunter Valley, the winemakers up here, they believe life is just too short to make bad wine. So savouring good wine is definitely the way to go. And they pair that up with some great restaurant experiences. And in fact, an event that happens in winter, which is June, July, August, they have this wonderful food and wine festival, and they'll do beautiful tasting plates of food, and they'll pair it up. And of course, the lovely thing about Australian winery regions is you always know it's Australia. Yeah, a lot of wildlife found through here. And I've got to say, to see the wildlife, the way to do it is to stay out there, to stay at a place like Spicer's Vineyard Estate, where you'll see wallabies and kangaroos right on sunset coming in to say hello. You'll be sitting out there at the beautiful restaurant Botanica, savouring some of that wine you just bought that day, and the chefs paired it off with a nice menu. Wow, that's kind of special. Now, Sydney itself is home to some amazing events. The Handa Opera on Sydney Harbour is an annual event between March and April, and they actually build a platform out over the bay itself, and you'll sit back up on the grounds and look down. It's just a spectacular event. There's also the Sydney Comedy Festival that happens between April and May. Now, I'm not advocating you go and do a week of comedy, but I mean, if you happen to be there, I mean, one night out, and use your American and your Canadian accents to your best of your ability, because Aussies will pick up on it, like, oh, look where you're from, and all of a sudden you're making friends. Vivid Sydney has become as big as New Year's Eve. Sydney New Year's Eve is just nuts. Festival of light, music and ideas. Between May and June, the whole of Sydney is lit up, and it's just a hive of activity. One of the favourite things to do here is do a vivid cruise, because you really get a chance to take in all the spectacular artistic sort of installations that are in place. Then there's the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, which happens every year, February to March. It's a lot of fun, and it's become on the calendar. It's quite the big event. In fact, it's so big they've drawn the attention of the world. And World Pride is going to be coming to Sydney in 2023. And there'll be a wonderful event, and this will itself it'll have quite the array of activities as well. Then, if you like, those who like sport, women's basketball. When you think about the Olympics, you think about basketball, yes, the Aussies and the Americans and the Canadians, for that matter, always kind of duke it out. Well, this is going to be the World Championships down here in Australia. Australia's going to be hosting them. And if you've got clients who are interested in women's basketball, the World Cup of basketball, then maybe now's the time to start talking about it. At least let us know, because we know we can make sure we can secure tickets and get things set up. Just as FIFA has announced that the World Cup will be happening as shared between Australia and New Zealand in 2023. There are going to be little girls right now who are practicing their game, who are on the edge of becoming great, and they could be making the squad that makes the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2023. This is something to hang your hat on. Wouldn't you like, as a family, to head down there and support a niece or a nephew? It'd be great. I think it's going to be quite exciting. There's also the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. Now, the yacht race is just so much fun. The day after Christmas, it's called Boxing Day. And it's that day there that the yachts will line up and they'll leave Sydney Harbour. They'll go through the heads and they'll push out into the open ocean. It's quite an exhilarating race. They try to get down to Hobart before New Year's Eve. So yes, if you're into yacht racing, this is huge. Then there is Sydney New Year's Eve. The New Year's Eve celebration is one the world is on. This is the first major city in the world to celebrate New Year's Eve. Every year people kind of turn on their televisions to listen and watch the spectacle. If you're here, we want to get you on the water. We want to get you on the harbour in a little boat with some champagne and strawberries and oysters, and with some good Aussie friends with you, celebrating the start of your new year. Now, all this we put together into an itinerary like you're looking at here. Your travel agency clients, your travel agency name and your travel agency logo, and of course your client name there as well. So your name's on the front, and your travel agent you're dealing with, their name's there as well. It's bound. Lovely pictures. Inside, local contact information. So when you're down there, you've got somebody to talk to. Somebody can help you out if need be. The itinerary is laid out in two parts. The first part is just a review, and it's in sequential order: date, product description, hotels, tours, airport transfers, flights, and so on. Then each one of those elements will have its own page. So we give you extra information about the city you're going to visit, information about the hotel you're staying in, the Rendezvous Sydney at the Rocks. You're there for 4 nights. You're arriving on a Monday, leaving on a Friday, hotel description, hotel information, confirmation number, map of where the hotel is. You're not going to get lost. We've got it sorted out. Then your tour details are also spelled out. Here we've got the Sydney Opera House tour and tasting plate. So the date of the tour, tour description, meeting point, more details, confirmation number, map. Perfect. That's all you need to present. You walk up and say, there's my tour, bang. And all the tours, whether it's whale watching on a beautiful cruise, whether it's going up the Blue Mountains and taking in that high country eco tour, or perhaps you're going to do Sydney bridge climb, getting up early in the morning, do a sunrise bridge climb tour. Or perhaps it's tickets to the Opera House. You're going to go and see a show. We've got Opera A reserve tickets, only the best for you. And there you are at the Opera, taking it all in, having a great night out. We also put in the itinerary, we put all the flights in one spot. Now, they are in the front in that very abbreviated version of the itinerary, but then we put all the flights in one spot in all their detail. Because when you go to airports, that's the trickiest part. And having your passport in one hand, opening up this page here, it'll make going through airports like a hot knife through butter. Makes it really simple. And then to add to that, we have all this travel information. We've worked with our travel advisor partners to put together information that's important to you. Information about weather, what to wear, hotels, currency, tipping, shopping, all the stuff you need to know when you're going to another country. And it makes sure that you're prepared. We then print out the itinerary and put it in a nice folio, and you'll get a travel bag with that as well. And when you get this itinerary, one thing we like to suggest is while you're down there, make sure you get send your travel advisor a few holiday snaps. And you've got to be in the picture too, like this couple here. There they are on their bridge climb. That's that picture of them on their bridge climb. Now we take that picture, and what we'll do when you return, we'll take that picture and we'll put it into the front cover of your itinerary. So we'll send you out a PDF of your itinerary now. You've just used the other one. You've turned it over till the corners are torn and worn. We'll send you a fresh one now with your picture on the front with something you did when you were down there that was quite memorable. And that will be a souvenir that you'll keep for the rest of your lives. So with that now, I'd like to open it up to questions. It's time to start planning, my friends. If you've got questions for me on the right-hand side of the screen, ask away and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. A question here about bushfires and wildlife. And yes, with bushfires, they have bounced back. Absolutely. Typically, the Australian bush, there are plants in the Australian bush that only actually germinate seeds through fire. In fact, the Banksias will only open their seed pods at about 500 degrees. That's pretty hot. And that's only a fire that can do that. In fact, the whole nature of our relationship with the bush and fire is quite interesting. In fact, we should probably look closer at what the Aboriginal people have done over time, because the Aboriginal people are the oldest living culture in the world, and they would use fire to hunt, but they would use the fire at a certain time of the year. That would be the winter, the colder months. They would only burn fires, they would use fire to kind of flush out wildlife, but they wouldn't burn it on any day. They would wait till the temperatures are right. They would wait until the wind was right, and then they would burn, and that burn wouldn't be a very hot fire. It would just kind of burn the actual underbrush. It would clear out the grasses. It would lick the bark of trees, but it would do no more than that. But it would flush out wildlife, and with that they would catch their prey. Smart, eh? We haven't learnt much from them, really. We need to listen a bit more. But that's something. I mean, here's another fact about fire and wildlife in Australia. Do you realise there's only one animal in the world that actually, it's a bird, that is actually using fire to hunt? You think chimpanzees are clever. In Australia, we've got birds of prey that will actually pick up burning embers of a fire. So these birds of prey will swoop around a fire, picking up wildlife that gets flushed out because of the flames, right? As soon as the fire starts to die down, or there doesn't seem to be a lot of wildlife coming out anymore, they'll fly down, they'll pick up a branch with some flames on one end, and they'll fly across to a field, and they'll drop that in a field. And all of a sudden, another fire starts up. What happens? Little mice, little marsupials start running around, and the birds of prey come in, they swoop and pick them up. Pretty clever, eh? Yeah, so fire is something that's been a part. Now, the fires, of course, last year were pretty harsh, but a very small percentage of Australia was actually affected by fires. And a lot of that has bounced back because after those fires, we had some great rains. And so it's good to see that. And also, it's been good to see and encouraging to see wildlife coming back too. Not just coming back, but seeing little babies as well. Because new green shoots provide sustenance for these new animals. And so it's been great to see. So thank you for that question. Things are coming back, which is good. Right now, there is no visitation, so there is no protocol. The protocol is you can't go to Australia right now. So when things open up, we will let you know, and we'll let you know the protocols. I've got good news, though. French Polynesia's open, and I've just come back from there, and it's working. I went and did my test. I had the whole 3 days prior, got my test, got my results. I was good to travel, went by plane, wore my mask, enjoyed my journey. I've got some great stories to tell you. And if you haven't picked up on some of that journey, I'll be doing a little follow-up tomorrow. Doing a little follow-up on that. And also next week, I'm doing a big push on promotion on French Polynesia. Look out for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Um, With regards to having clients who are interested in travel, I'm not too sure whether this is, you're looking to travel yourselves, what you will need to do is email me. I can't work from the emails in here, but if you've got somebody who really is looking to travel right now, we'll do some follow-up. I'll be sending emails after. Incidentally, I will be sending all the travel advisors a list of all of your friends and clients and family members who have joined today. So I'll send you a link of all the people who not only did their register, but also they attended. So you'll have a list of all that. That'll take a little time, but we'll have that to you by tomorrow. And I'll send you a link today, an email today, just to follow up and say hello. So you can always send me, when you get that email, if you've got any specific information, then you can ask me. But I can help you out with that. A good question here is about how much time do you recommend to stay in Sydney? Well, I think Sydney, from the presentation I've given you, you could stay there for 2 weeks. From what I've given you right now, easily 2 weeks of vacation. But often people don't have 2 weeks. So then it comes down to what do people want to do. Now, what we can do here with this, we need to work that out. Now, I've got a checklist I can send you. Again, I'm only going to send to people who request them. When I send my email today, if you've got something specific you want to follow up on, email me, and I will help you out. If you, for those people out there, for the family and friends and the clients who are listening to this presentation, if you're keen to organise a trip and you need to start and talk to your travel advisor. Talk to them now and say, hey, can you make sure Jeff sends you that little page? I've created a checklist, and it just helps work out. It's like, I call it my aptitude test of Australia. So it's to work out what it is you want to really do. So whenever you start picking things like, I want to go bridge climbing and sailing, and I'll know you're more adventurous. If you do wine and food, then I'll know it's more wine and food. But I can help guide you on how to do. And you might see experiences here, but we might do them in other cities if you can't spend all your time in Sydney. For those that just want to do Sydney, I mean, you've got things I've left off the table like cooking classes and all sorts of fun things you can do in Sydney. It's just an amazing place to explore. I'll follow up with regards to the recordings. I'll follow up with regards to everything. When you receive my email, make sure you follow up with what you need, and that's probably how we'll play it. I might leave it for right now. I think I've kind of covered most of the questions that are relative to this. And there was one here. Rebecca asked, who was the name of the lady, the Aboriginal Heritage? Her name's Auntie Margaret. And she's a sweetheart. She does a fabulous job. Look, guys, I appreciate your comments. I love the lovely feedback too. I'm glad you're enjoying these. The whole nature of these presentations it's all about making sure that you kind of get excited about travel. We want to keep you excited. That's what my travel agent partners have asked me to put this together, because they want you to be excited. So contact your travel advisor. Ask them for the kit. If you need the kit, if you need maps, if you want the dictionary so you can kind of go back and work out half the stuff I've actually said, then you can use that. But it's all about preparing you for when the day that Sydney opens up. So a virtual vacation is all about just getting you excited. We want to work with you now, and the fun's in the planning, so call your travel advisor and let the fun begin. Tomorrow, travel agents only, I'll be doing a Namibia presentation. We're going to go to Africa tomorrow. For those clients that are listening to this, if you're interested, talk to your travel advisor. They're the only way I don't mind if you're kind of that interested. If you want to join in, just ask your travel advisor, and they can share a link with you. You can join us on that. I won't be saying anything untoward. It'll be a lot of fun. In fact, Namibia is amazing, amazing country. Quite the kaleidoscope of experiences and just the incredible colours and quite incredible. Then next Friday, going to have a bit of a break until next Friday, because we're going to have the LFC goes to Tahiti. Now, the LFC is our last Friday club, and the last Friday club, the last Friday of every month, this is our opportunity to get together and have a drink together. So I'll be sending you an invitation to make a cocktail. You can just have a glass of wine or a beer if you like, but the idea will be we're going to get together on Zoom. We're going to have a Zoom meeting, and we're going to make poisson cru. Poisson cru is like There's lovely raw fish and lime and coconut, and it's like ceviche, you know what I'm saying? And it's very much a Tahitian, croissant cru is a very much a Tahitian fare. So I'm going to make it, and I'm going to have a cook-off against some of the chefs from Moorea and Bora Bora. Yeah, well, I'm going to challenge them to who can make the best croissant cru. Ha ha! So you can join us, and I'm actually going to have some of the hotels, the representatives from the hotels are going to be online as well. They're going to make the cocktail with us, and we're going to have a cocktail. We're going to talk about Tahiti. We're going to talk about my recent experiences. There's lots of questions people have for me about getting the tests and what was the second test done. You know, when you get to pass the first test, that's the one you do 3 days prior to traveling, but 4 days after you've already arrived, you actually have to do another test, and you hand that test into to the hotel you're staying in. I did that test, and I'll tell you about that as well. Tahiti is opening up, and what we're going to be doing is getting you excited. If you want to become a tiare specialist, I'll be talking more about that next week as well. I'll then, in September, be doing Moorea, virtual vacation. I'm going to focus just on the island of Moorea, this wonderful, magical paradise, and you've got a chance to really soak up what Moorea has to offer. Then the following Thursday, we're going to Bora Bora, a virtual vacation to Bora Bora. I mean, it's just phenomenal, the colours. It's just heaven on earth. Yes, now's the time, if you're serious about travelling, if you've got clients right now who are seeking to travel. I mean, there's couples that have postponed their wedding arrangements and because they can't get venues organised. Well, just shorten your venue list, shorten your wedding party, fly them all out here to Bora Bora and have a honeymoon and a wedding all in one. Yeah. Oh, and there's families right now that have had to have been pulled apart. If everybody passes and everybody hasn't got it, then you can fly together and head down to a destination which is pristine paradise, absolutely gorgeous. Now, I hope you've enjoyed our virtual vacation, and I promise you that our Travelodger partners who promote these virtual vacations are very much at the forefront of my mind. And they are our partners, and we work strongly with them. If you would like to see any of the recorded presentations, if there's any destination you particularly want to see, talk to your travel advisor about it, because now's the time to start and plan. By making plans, you're prepared, because when things open up, there'll be a brief window where the pricing will be very attractive. I can already tell you, with regards to Tahiti, that 2021 is going to book up before it even starts, because a lot of people have transferred their bookings forward, so it's already half full now. So the rest of it will fill up very quickly, but what's happening right now is it's open right now. And if you want to escape right now, we can get you down to French Polynesia. So on behalf of all the Travel Advisor partners, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Please contact them, let them know what you thought of the presentation. Be in touch, stay close to your travel advisors, because they are the ticket to fashioning great itineraries for your next vacation away. Here's cheers, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.